Well, hi again, friends and YouTubers. Well, here's a little project for you. It's a cutting board miller table, and my friend John from back in North Carolina gave me this idea. So I built a couple of these this summer to give them a try, and they've worked out quite well. Well, the larger one here is a 12 by 18 that I picked up from Walmart. The side rails and the water smoothing bar are just stock 1 by 2s that I picked up from Home Depot. The back board is made out of a 1 by 3 that I also picked up from Home Depot. This is big enough that I can run it on the stand that I run my other sluices on, so that makes it kind of handy. Plus, I can run it out of a 10-gallon tote if I want to. So this has quite a bit of versatility to it. Well, the smaller one is made out of an 11 by 14. And I made it a little fancier, and so for this one you'll need to have some power tools to make the dado cuts and whatnot. I wanted a little tabletop unit that I could just stick on a table and run during the winter time when it gets kind of cold and maybe want to run a package of pay dirt or something. Well, the cutting board is a 15 by 18 that I picked up from Walmart. And so I also picked up a 1 by 2 to use for the side rails and the water smoothing bar. For the water bar in the back, I found out that it needs a little more height, so I picked up a 1 by 3 for it. And so you can buy these at your big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. One of the first questions I had was whether or not the chalkboard paint was going to stick to this board or not. So I painted it right off with a couple of coats of paint, and as you can see, it started flaking off right away, and by the time I got through, it was getting pretty beat up. So you need to put down a base coat before you put on the chalkboard paint, and so I did that by spraying some bonding primer on the other side of it to test it, and as you can see, this is holding up quite well and hasn't had any signs of really flaking off or chipping, so we're going to put a coat of that down. The primer that I'm using is Rustoleum Bonding Primer. This is some of the best stuff that I've found so far. And if you put this down as a base coat, it'll allow just about any paint to stick to pretty much any surface. It'll let you paint all kinds of plastics and PVC and stuff like that. So it's a great product. Give it about 4 good coats on there. Well, at this point in time, after you spray the board down with bonding primer, for those who want to use a Hobbico mat, this is probably a good time to put it on. You can just take some contact cement to hold it down, because the contact cement's waterproof. And as you can see here, that the mat just about fits perfectly on the cutting board. One of the highlights of this project is it doesn't require a great many tools. All you need is a handsaw and a drill and a few bits. However, it would help if you made you kind of a homemade miter box like this one, and that will help you get your cut straight a little bit easier. You can buy one of these at Home Depot or Harbor Freight or somewhere like that, but if you make your own like this, you can make the side rails a little longer, and so you can put stop blocks up on there in order to make your cuts the exact same length each time. Once you get the parts all cut out, you can assemble them on top of the board and see kind of how they're all going to fit together there. This was when I found out that the little bar in the very back for the water bar wasn't going to be tall enough. So that's when I changed it over to the 1x3. And that'll give us a little more elevation up off of the base. Now I always put a bar across the bottom there, and especially on the Miller tables, because the water will try to work its way back up under the bottom of the Miller table, and so this forces the water to drop straight down into the catch container. Well, now's about the time to drill the hole for the water bar. So to mark the spot to drill, I made this little tool. It's just a little water bar with a plug in the end of it, and then I put about a number 6 screw in there that comes out a little bit further. Now I make it about a 1/2 inch off the base, so I've got a 1/2 inch board there to give it some elevation. Then mark your center, and then you just push it in, and that will leave you a little drilling mark on there that you can line up for drilling the hole. Yeah, if you can see it around the knot there. The hole saw we're going to use has a 1/4 inch pilot bit, so we'll drill a little test hole here for that pilot bit to sit down inside. Well, the 1/2 inch plumbing that we're going to use needs a 1 1/16 inch or a 27 millimeter hole saw to drill a hole for the 1/2 inch T. This is a little too small, and the next size up, 1 1/8, is a little too big, so we'll have to ream the hole out just a little bit larger with a rasp. Well, close but no cigar, so we'll have to ream it out with hand rasp just a little bit just so it'll fit. To mark where to drill the holes, I use a little magic marker in a V block and just draw me a line down the length of it there so I can mark it off where to drill the holes. I drill the holes at about every 1/2 inch along there. I usually drill 1/8 inch holes, a 1/2 inch apart on this. Sometimes I'll leave the water bar like this, and sometimes I'll enlarge the holes a little more. If you want a little bit larger holes, like say maybe 1/4 inch, you can use one of these tapered bits that you can buy at your Harbor Freight store for cheap, or you can just use a 1/4 inch drill and go ahead and ream them out just a little bit larger. You might want to play with your water bar a little bit, get the right flow. If you wish to drill a hole for a gold vial, I'll show you how I did it on using a couple of other tables here. First of all, you got to find where you want to put it. Then you take and mark it with a piece of tape, and use your magic marker to mark the spot where you want it to go. Then I take and drill a 1/8 inch pilot hole going all the way through the board there. That's so you know on the back side where to drill. I use a 5/8 inch Forstner bit because it leaves a nice smooth flat hole. You can use that hole that you got through drilled to line up the bit in. The bit has a little point on the end of it you can stick down in that 1/8 inch hole that you drilled, and that gets you in the right spot. Now, using that hole to line up your next bit, I usually drill maybe about a 1/4 inch hole down through there. Okay, now we'll drill a hole in the cap. So to do that, I usually put the cap down in the hole and tape it over so that it's going to be in there nice and tight. And then I can drill it from the other side. Well, I've tried 3 different types of glue on this, and none of them have held that lid in there. So this time around, I'm going to try some Loctite epoxy putty. Now this comes in a little tube, and it's got 2 parts both on the same little tube. And so what you do is you cut a piece off and knead it together for a few minutes, and then that mixes the 2 of them together. So we'll give that a try and see how it works out here. Well, I think that's going to do it. It looks like it's going to hold in there pretty solid. Well, I like to leave the painting of the table till last. As you can see here, that first initial coat we put on the bare plastic didn't hold up too well. So that's why we use the bonding primer on the working side of it. Now when you take a look at it, it's looking in good shape because it's gone through the same process that the other has, and it's holding up very well. So that's why we want to put this bonding primer on there, is to give a good sealing coat on there for the chalkboard paint to stick to. Well, Rustoleum chalkboard paint is the paint that I prefer to use for this. I've used it for many years and it's always held up very well for me. And so you can buy this at most any store that carries paint. I like to apply the paint with a little 3-inch roller. This makes it a lot easier, and you can put just about an ounce of paint in it at a time, and that's just about enough to give you one coat on here. Well, after the second coat it starts looking a little better. I usually put about 6 coats on there because this paint dries really quite thin, and you want a good coat on there, being as it's going to be submerged in water for quite a bit. Well, to protect the wood, I usually like to use Minwax Helmsman Spar Varnish. I've used this for many years and it's done a very good job for me. It takes about 4 hours before you can recoat, but after 3 days it hardens into a nice hard finish that resists a lot of wear and tear. Give it about 4 good coats. Well, now it's time to put the woodworking down on there. I usually run screws in from the bottom to anchor it to the board. To attach the board that goes across the end of the table, I usually screw it into the side rails here. Well, one of the last things to do is to put this little bracket on. It has a 1/4 inch bolt that's about 2.5 or 3 inches long on there. It also has another little nut on there. This is what adjusts the elevation of the sluice on the back. And this fits through a hole in the stand or the tote. Well, this is what the final product looks like. I'm sorry it's been kind of long-winded, but this has been primarily designed for those folks who don't have a great deal of building experience, and we're trying to help them get through it one step at a time. Well, as always, I appreciate your watching, and I hope you have a good day. Bye now.